Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are again close reading. This is our final close read for the editorial and article. Tomorrow will be your assessment on both the editorial and the article. We're going to focus as we close read on the following essential questions. Number 4, what's informational text really about? 5, how does interaction with text provoke thinking and response? And 7, how does a reader's purpose influence how the text should be read? As we close read, remember we're going to be reading through the text 3 different times. The first time we read it, we're reading it for what the text says. Second time we're reading it for how the text says it. And the third time for why the text matters. As you read through, it is the same text from yesterday. So technically it's not our first phase of close reading, but rather fourth phase of close reading. But for phase 1, we're going to read the entire section from the article. This time we're going to focus on what the text says. As we look at it, we're really, in theory, this is actually a phase 2 look at the text, because in phase 2, you focus on point of view and purpose. So as you read through for this first question, which is technically a phase 2 level question, we're going to look for what does the information in each article reveal about the author's point of view. You want to begin your response with one of the following for both. So you're going to have this twice because there's 2 articles up there, and each writer has a distinct point of view. So you'll do this twice for this one, and you'll begin with one of those. The author hopes, believes, thinks, wishes, and finish that sentence off. What? What do you think the author hopes, believes, thinks, or wishes? Do that for each author, because remember, we have 2 texts that we're looking at comparatively here, the news article and the editorial. As we go through this first, but technically a second level phase of reading, we're going to be focusing on learning target number 7, to determine the author's point of view in the text. As we look at the author's point of view and determining the author's point of view of the text, keep in mind that means to decide the author's position or outlook in the text. And again, this does mean, just like we talked about in reading half a class or in literature content, in informative content, it still means perspective. I don't care whether the author put it in first, second, or third. Yes, you can add that as a layer, but if you're not explaining the perspective of that author, their viewpoint, how they see that specific event unfold, and what they are saying about that event, and how their look at the world, their viewpoint is unique to the way they've seen this event, then you're missing the boat. So don't just say, oh, it's first person. Oh, it's second person. Oh, it's third person. That's not what this means. Yes, you can say that, but you need to go further. You need to also focus on the perspective. That answers the question, what does the information reveal about the point of view? Which quote best illustrates the author's point of view? And again, that's how we can start with that. The author hopes, believes, thinks, or wishes, because that response, when you finish that statement off, you're looking at perspective, not, oh, it's first person, second person, third person. You can't say the author hopes they wrote it in first person. That's how this question starter or the sentence starter helps you to guide it towards what the author thinks and feels, their perspective, rather than just it's written in this, this, or this. So make sure you're looking at perspective as you determine each, so you have to do that twice, of the author's point of view. As we get into the second phase of reading, you're going to reread the text for how the text says it, rereading this text again. This time we're going to focus on how it says it by focusing on each of the author's perspective or interpretations of the event differently. So these authors interpret the event of Abby's rescue, the event of Abby's situation differently. Okay. Yesterday, we focused a little bit on this kind of idea as well. And we'll talk a little bit more when I talk about the learning targets for this. So then you're going to answer the question, how does each author interpret the event of Abby's, search and rescue, that whole event surrounding Abby? How do they interpret it differently? Cite text evidence to support your response for this one. You want to begin with the following sentence starter. Text 1 suggests what, while text 2 suggests what. So as we do this one, we are focusing on the following learning target. We are looking at learning target number 16, to analyze how two or more authors writing about the same topic shape their presentations of key information by interpreting the facts differently. Yesterday, we looked at learning target number 17. Maybe it was number 15. Yeah, it was number 15, to analyze how two or more authors writing about the same topic use key information with different evidence. That's why we focused on the dad there. So this section yesterday, they had different evidences, different, quotes from the dad in their piece. They both had the dad in their piece, but they focused on different evidence. Today, we're focusing on a different interpretation of the same event. So that's that subtle difference between these two learning targets. So as we look at the different interpretation of the event, we're going to look closely at the way each author writing about the same topic, that event, explains their evidence and supports their claims differently than the other. Oftentimes, this answers the question, which sentence explains how one text presents a different interpretation of the event than the other? So focus on how they're interpreting this event with Abby and how they are interpreting the event in two clearly different ways to answer this question. As we get into, and obviously with that phase, we do want to go back to learning target number 1. You will have to have two pieces of evidence because there's two different texts you're looking at here. Cite a piece of evidence in the form of direct quote, as in pull something from that piece, directly quote it from the text to support how you see that interpretation being different of the event between the two. And then as we close read the third and final time, we're going to close read for why the text matters. As we do this, we're going to read through it one last time here. And I want you to read the entire excerpt, focusing on why it matters by looking at the author's strongest piece of evidence. And then answer this question. Based on the information from the excerpt, is the evidence given by each author sufficient for supporting his or her claims? Explain your answer and the evidence you highlighted for this question here. Begin your sentence with, no, the evidence is not sufficient to support the claim because, or yes, the evidence is sufficient to support their claim because. So within this one, we are looking at that other feature. Again, there's that comparison from yesterday. And in this one, you will need an evidence to support for your answer for both. So two pieces of evidence here. So make sure you're following learning target number 1 to cite a piece of evidence in the form of a direct quote from the text. And as we also look at this, we are going to look at that other side of relevancy, which is sufficiency. So we looked at relevancy, learning target number 13 yesterday, when we said relevant means that the evidence used clearly connects to the claim. So yes, it relates to, it connects to the claim. Today we're looking at sufficient. Now, something could be sufficient or it could be insufficient or not sufficient. Sufficiency is a little different than relevancy. So this means to make a judgment about whether the evidence given in the text is enough to support the argument or claims. As in, do they have enough amount-wise? Did they give us enough evidence to thoroughly convince and talk our audience into agreeing with us? So some of the questions you'll see is, which statement best assesses whether there's sufficient evidence in the passage to support the claim? So if yes, it's sufficient, then that means the amount of evidence on topic to the claim is specific, it's detailed, and it definitely supports their claim nicely. If the answer is no for sufficiency, that means they didn't provide enough evidence. There isn't enough support. The evidence is off topic, and the one that is on topic is there's just not enough there for us to fully believe that they have enough to convince that reader to tie in with their claim. So that's what we're going to do for the third and final close read, is look at the evidence being sufficient to the claims. You will see the claims here written in the margins again to help you answer this question. Go ahead and begin today's close reading.